The next day, the great crowd that had gathered heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel." This crowd praised him. They celebrated his miracles and with great expectation told everyone about him. But they did not know him. They were waiting for someone who would rule with strength and might, but he came as a humble servant. They wanted him to finally bring their people glory, but he wanted to change them so their lives would bring God glory. They were expecting a general who would crush their enemies, but he came saying, "Love your enemies." They thought he could offer them deliverance from their oppressors, but he came offering deliverance from sin. This crowd would soon realize that Jesus wasn't gonna be what they wanted, and they turned on him before they ever realized he was what they needed. So as they yelled, "Crucify!" Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you a king?" Jesus answered, "I am not that kind of king." His kingdom isn't what you see here. It won't be established by chaos and war. His kingdom is in our hearts. His kingdom is truth. His kingdom is goodness. His kingdom is righteousness. He is the humble king, the king of healing, the king of forgiveness, the king of love. Today, we lift our voices. We cry, "Hosanna! Save us! Save us from our sin. Come dwell in our hearts. Hosanna! We worship you, Jesus Christ, our King."
How many of you were at the Cardinal opener on Thursday? Anybody? You watched it? I guess that counts. It's not quite what I was thinking. You know, I was looking for those who were in the crowd. They were guessing, let's see, there were 48,000 in the stadium. The stadium was full. I read somewhere that they were thinking maybe another 50,000 were in Ballpark Village surrounding downtown. I'm just saying, it was like a big deal. Opening day, they march in all the legends. You watched it, right? They all come in. They got Cadillacs. It is very much a parade of champions. That's what opening day is in St. Louis. How many went to the Blues victory parade? We're going back a little bit. There's a guy that was there. Danny was there, right? No, you didn't go? I thought you went down there that day. No? All right, Dan, you were there? You have good seats? Oh, you were both there. All right, okay. Anywhere from, what did I hear? 500,000 to 1 million were downtown St. Louis. The place was packed. It was absolutely a zoo. Again, as I recall, everybody got, like, they brought them in on cars and paraded through the streets, and you end up with the Stanley Cup. When people win, it's a big deal. That's what Palm Sunday was. Palm Sunday was a victory celebration, okay? So you can understand, like, we're wired to celebrate victorious, kings marching in. We get that, right? What we missed with Palm Sunday, what they missed with Palm Sunday was Jesus came, but he came as a different kind of king. He was riding into town. In fact, somebody said that maybe that's the only time you read in the Gospels Jesus rode instead of walked. Only time he ever was on an animal was that 2-mile march into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday with everybody waving the branches, throwing their coats down, because they were celebrating a king coming to rescue them. That's what they've been looking for. They wanted a king to throw out Rome. They were occupied by a foreign enemy. The Messiah was going to come on the Passover. They were like, here we go. Man, freedom at last. And Jesus is coming and he's going to disappoint them. Think about that for a second. Have you ever been disappointed by a big buildup and go, oh, really? That's what happened what we call the week of Passover. The Jews still celebrate Passover today. It's April 1st to the 9th this year. If you're familiar with a little bit of your Old Testament, Passover for the Jewish people was the time when the angel of death passed over the Jewish firstborn. All the other firstborn in Egypt were killed, and because of that, Pharaoh let the Jewish people go. So here we are 2,000 years later, 2,000 plus years later. They will celebrate the Passover here on whatever the first is. Is that going to be Tuesday? It'll kick in, right? But they don't celebrate Palm Sunday because to the Jewish people, the Messiah has not yet come. Palm Sunday today is celebrated by Christians, a lot of different, Baptists, Lutherans, Methodists, Catholics, all right, there's a lot of different, but it all has to do with the people who believe that Christ was the Messiah, that he was the Savior coming into the world. So there is a great divide today. There are those who are going to celebrate and remember freedom from Egypt and still waiting for a Messiah. And there are those that are thinking this is Holy Week. This is the beginning as we remember what Jesus did that last week. It's interesting. There's 89 chapters in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Okay, 80, let's say 90. I'm going to round it up, right? 89 chapters to be accurate, though. And 29 of the chapters, a third of the chapters in your Gospels deal with Palm Sunday moving to Easter. That's a good chunk. That's a third of them. Okay? So there's only 4 chapters in the New Testament that deal with Jesus' birth, to give you some contrast. 29 chapters deal with this last week of his life. So he rides in, and we're going to hang out in Matthew 21 if you've got a Bible. Little guy by the name of Sammy was 5. He was sick on Palm Sunday. His parents come back from church. Sammy was there with Grandma, and they got these palm branches that they're waving, right? And Sammy's like, "What are those about?" And so mom explains, it's Palm Sunday and we're celebrating Jesus coming, and that's just kind of what we did today. And Sammy just goes, "You're kidding me." He goes, "The one day I miss church, Jesus shows up." And sometimes I think that happens with us. We fail to see Jesus showing up. So Matthew 21 is when Jesus showed up, okay? I want to start reading in verse 1. As they approached Jerusalem, they is Jesus and his followers, okay? As I call it, his merry band of followers, right? As they are approaching Jerusalem, they came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, and Jesus sent 2 of those merry band, 2 of his disciples, and he said, "Go to the village ahead of you, and at once you'll find a donkey tied up there with her colt by her. Untie them, bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, tell him that the Lord has need of them, and he will send them right away." This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. "See, to the daughter of Zion, see your king comes to you. He's gentle, and he's riding on a donkey. He's on a colt, the foal of a donkey." Basically, one donkey has never been ridden. That's what all that language means. Disciples went, and they did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt. They put their coats on them, and Jesus sat on them. And now a very large crowd, they were spreading their coats on the road, while others cut branches from the trees, and they were spreading them on the road. And the crowds went ahead of Jesus, and those that followed shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest." And when Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, "Who is this guy?" And the crowds answered, "This is Jesus, a prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." I want to stop right there. See, I thought it was interesting that the crowd in 10 and 11, I don't want you to miss that. Very simple exchange there where they said the whole town is like a buzz. Opening day is a buzz if you're a baseball fan, right? I turned on the game after it was over to see an interview of JJ, okay? But I was aware that Thursday was opening day. I just didn't get a chance to go watch it in any way. There are people that think it should be a holiday. The whole town of St. Louis is abuzz with opening day. When you read here that the town was stirred, It's an interesting word. It has to do with, like, right there, verse 10, when Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred, and they said, stirred has to do with like an earthquake. It's like it was shaken. The whole town was talking about this. They could see it, they could hear it. Hey, what's going on? And so there were those that were asking, who is this guy? Now, let's think about, just peel it back a little bit. Who would have been in the crowd that day? Is it just a bunch of random passerbyers? I think not. I think that you would have had people there that saw Lazarus get raised. I think they would have been in the crowd. It wasn't that far away. Imagine that you were part of watching that guy walk out of the tomb. It says there that many believed, right? There were a lot that didn't, but man, it was like you're there and you're like, man, is this it? Is this the Messiah? I think there's in that crowd today many people that would have seen, maybe some that were healed themselves. Certainly enough people that had seen something cool happen that Jesus had done. And they're like, whoa, and here he comes. And you're shouting. Who is this guy? There would have been people there who had no idea. Maybe they heard the stories. And you like nudge somebody. Who is this? Who's Jesus? What's he doing? Why is he coming? Oh man, let me tell you. To the point that they think that maybe there was 100 to 200,000 people there for the Passover, which would have been just a short time afterward, stirred, shaken, talking. So think Cardinal Stadium times 2 to 3, out for this victory parade. Not quite as many people as was at the Blues victory parade. That kind of crowd, all centered not on a team, but on one guy who was causing sort of this divisive thing. Was he the Messiah? Was he not? Man, we've heard some stuff. Hey, you should have been there. I saw this. Here's what he said. Man, wow. I can't believe I remember when. Everybody's talking. Jesus coming in, and they're shouting and singing Hosanna. And I'm thinking to myself, other than like just remembering that's the day that Jesus came to Jerusalem, which like, okay, so it's nice. What's the big deal for me in 2026? That's fair. Like, I think we can be guilty of looking back, and a lot of churches are going to say, oh, yeah, it was nice, but what about tomorrow? What difference does this make for your life tomorrow? That's what I've been asking myself. What difference does this make for Mike today, tomorrow? I got 4 observations from the text. I just want to ask this for us to think about, unpack a little bit. Kind of like, Here's the first one that I thought about. When Jesus came, he came humbly. He came gently. He didn't come riding on a horse. A horse or a stallion would have been the victor coming for war, for aggression, to take over, to say, I'm going to rule. I'm putting my fist down. Here we go. Think of World War II. When the conquering army went into town, often they rumbled in with what first? Pictures of tanks going through the streets. Power, might, strength. And Jesus, the King of all creation, the one who spoke and things happened, comes riding on a donkey? Seriously, a donkey? Not like a big old stallion, like I'm all like about power, but a donkey? But the donkey was a symbol of peace. Christ came lowly into this, receiving the praise of the people, but he didn't come to conquer. He didn't come to beat. He didn't come to like, whoa, slay you with his words. Send angels, right? I love it. When I was reading this week, somebody said, Jesus never forced anybody to go to church. Think about that for a second. The Son of God never guilted anybody into following him. He never pointed the finger. He never said, if you don't, I'm going to zap you. He comes lowly and gently as a humble servant. Now, there's going to come a day when Jesus is going to rule, and everyone's going to see his might, and they're going to see his authority, and every knee will bow, and every tongue confess that he is the Christ. But today's not that day. Today he comes and he says, hey, will you follow? Will you willingly submit yourself? Will you put yourself under my authority because you want to, not because you have to? And that's a whole different ballgame. Totally different motivation for why someone would follow Jesus today. Because it's not like, oh man, if I don't, he's going to beat me. It's I follow him because I know that he loves me. He cares about me. He's got like my best interest at heart. And so one of the things that we need to keep in mind that I think plays to just your thinking is when you're out and about and living life and you screw up, do you worship the God that points the finger at you and has got a 2x4 out to beat you? Or do you worship the God who says, come on, let's get back up? You don't have to stay down. You do not have to wallow in your guilt. You don't have to stay in your shame. Remember when Jesus did his first sermon? If you may, it's at the front end of Luke. When Jesus first goes to church, he's done the whole temptation in the wilderness, and they give him the scrolls, and he reads from the Old Testament prophet of Isaiah. And what he reads from is a section that talks about the Messiah who is to come, and he makes it about himself. But I love there's a verse in there where he says that today is the acceptable day of the Lord. Today is the day of Jubilee. And what that would have meant to the good Jew was Jubilee was like every 50th year, everything was supposed to go back the way it was. And people never celebrated it because it meant like if you had like slaves that belonged to somebody else, you were supposed to release them. You're supposed to trust God to make it up. But they never did that. You're supposed to let the land go back. But you never did that because you were afraid. Like today. Like if you own it, you don't want to let it go, right? And Jesus comes on and he says, today is the day of Jubilee, of freedom. Today is the acceptable year of God's favor. That's still going on, friends. That's still what's happening this week. You're living in a time of God's favor. When God is for you, not against you. When God wants his kindness to lead you to repentance. When God is like saying, hey, you don't have to live under somebody else's reign. You don't have to live, pick it, the nonsense that we fill ourselves with. Jesus says you can be free from it. That's the significance of Jesus coming on a donkey. He came to do away with the chaos and bring peace. He came to do away with the guilt and the shame and the anger and bring grace. Now, the second thing I noted was that he welcomes our praise, but this is interesting. You've already seen it this morning. They sing, look at down to verse 9, Hosanna, the Son of David. A little bit later, we're going to pick up where the children are singing, Hosanna to the Son of David. Hosanna was a term of praise. It meant term of deliverance. But here's what the people missed. They were occupied by Rome. I've already told you that. They hated Rome. Rome, we can't get there because we're not enslaved to anybody. But you look at countries that are oppressed by somebody else that's come into their land and taken them over and has got them under their thumb. Those people want freedom. We got it. So to talk about somebody like being over you is like, you can't relate. There's a time when that wasn't true in our country, right? There's a time when there was a people that was enslaved to other people. They knew what freedom was. They sang songs about freedom. And so the Jewish people are singing, Hosanna, Lord, save us. God, help us. God, deliver us. get Rome off our neck. You are going to squash them like a bug. And we're like they're cheering him on. This is what's happening on Palm Sunday. They're looking forward to this freedom. And Rome is going to go. And the Jewish people and the Messiah are going to rise up and they're going to take over the world. Some of that's happening out there in our culture. You see some buzz and some stirring about how powerful we are, and if we can just kick the bad guy, we can just beat up the bad guy. Save us, help us. And Jesus, here's the interesting thing. Think about this for a second. He doesn't correct them. He doesn't say, wait a minute, time out. That's not what's going to happen here in a little bit. He received even their imperfect praise. Jesus welcomes your praise. And you might not have it all together. But you know there's something about this guy that captures your heart, your imagination. And you want to follow him, as imperfect as your knowledge is. Jesus is going to blow their minds in just a moment. He's literally going to do something that they were not expecting to happen that day. But as he's riding through Jerusalem on this donkey, they're all like whipped into a frenzy. Yes! Yes, Jesus, go, Jesus. And every time you gather to worship and you're singing, yes, go, Jesus, yes, thank you, you're entering into that praise. That's what we think of worship is. I'm going to give you a new definition for worship here. I want you to at least walk out of here and I want you to think about. We oftentimes think of worship as the 3 or 4 songs that we just did. We worshiped. And then you come to this part and you're like, well, I guess that's when we study the Bible. Can I give you a definition for worship? I think worship is any time you and I create space for God in our life. That's worship. Because you and I every day are faced with a choice to live for yourself or live for somebody else. And every time you decide to live by kingdom values, you worship. Every time when you decide you want to put God first in your life, I think that's worship. And there might not be a musical note that comes out of your mouth, but you're making a conscious choice with your life to honor the Lord. And it looks like 1,000 different ways. Somebody mistreats you in the restaurant, how do you respond? Somebody doesn't get your order right, how do you respond? Somebody doesn't do what you want them to do at work, how do you respond? Somebody cuts you off, how do you respond? Somebody angers you, how do you respond? Those are all opportunities to worship. You don't get your way, how do you respond? Those are all chances you have to say, I'm living by a different set of values. I'm living under a different kingship. This is why I choose to do what I do. I think that's praise, friends. It's not just on Sunday listening to music. You can do it to Joy FM in your car if you want. Totally cool. You can listen to other stuff. I mean, I'm listening. There's some, who's that guy that comes on? Oh, Jelly Roll. Any Jelly Roll fans here? I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but yeah. But he's got some lyrics in some of his songs that make me think of God because of what Jesus has done in his life and changing his life, right? So I'm not saying it's all Joy FM music. I'm saying when you're out there and you're creating space for Jesus, when you're choosing a different way of living because of what Christ has done for you, that is praise. The third observation that just struck me here was that he came to remove barriers. So here's where it really gets interesting to me. They expected Jesus to go to the Roman barracks and kick him out. I don't know if they knew how he was going to do it, because if you think about it, he was lacking something as he came to town if he was going to go to battle. He had any weapons. He's got no army. He's got no swords, no shields, no bows and arrows. These guys are waving palm branches. What are they going to do if the Roman legion were to come out at them? what would they have done? And so, but in their mind, they're thinking Jesus is going to go kick the Roman military by the tail and drag them out. And instead, look at verse 12. Jesus enters the temple area, and he drove out all who were buying and selling there. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. It's written, he said to them, my house is going to be called a house of prayer, but you're making it a den of robbers. The blind and the lame came to Jesus at the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the teachers of the law saw the wonderful things he was doing, and the children were singing in the temple area, Hosanna, the Son of David, they were indignant. They were ticked off. Do you hear these children, what they're saying? They asked Jesus. And Jesus said, have you never read, from the lips of children and infants, you have ordained praise? And then he left them and went out to the city of Bethany, where he spent the night. All right, this is, to me, this is like hinge point. So he doesn't go and like, I'm going to kick the army, boom. He goes to the temple. He goes to the place of the center of Jewish worship. Don't miss that. He went to church. And when he gets there, the temple was divided into various courts. The outer court was called the Court of the Gentiles. And it was the place where if you were a non-Jew, that was the only place you could go, but you could go to the Court of the Gentiles. And why would you go there? You would go there to read. You would go there to pray to this God, you've heard about Yahweh, Jehovah. You would go to seek him. You might go to ask questions. Maybe you find a priest or a teacher there. Hey, can you help me understand who this Jewish God is? That was the place for you to go. What the Jewish people had done was they had turned it into like a farmer's market. By that I mean like let's say that you were a good Jew and you had traveled to offer a sacrifice. They would find something wrong with your sacrifice, your lamb. There'd be some blemish, you'd have to buy a new lamb. Oh, how much a new lamb? I don't want to disparage any people who sell things, but we're all aware that there are some markets where there's a significant upcharge. Like, what? Really? What? You got to tack that on too? Huh? Right? So imagine your heart's right. You want to go worship God. You've got the best lamb you've got, and you get there and somebody says, yeah, sorry, buddy, it's not good enough. Well, what are you going to do? You traveled a day or two or who knows how many to get to the temple. And they're like, hey, we got one over here for you, buddy. I'll sell you this one for. And you're like, what? That was happening there. You had to, you might offer an offering, except your money, your current currency wasn't good enough. But you know what? We got temple currency. We can do a money exchange if you want. Well, what's the exchange rate? And you're like, whoa, seriously? And this is all going on in this place that was supposed to be a spot where people who didn't know God could come find him. And so Jesus goes to this court of the Gentiles, and this is the second time you read that he just starts like, I mean, in The Chosen, I think he's got a whip out. And he's just like, wow. And he's throwing tables over. And he's chasing. We read in the text, it says he drove them out. It literally means he chased them out the door. He's like, get out of here. This place was to be a place where people could come meet God, and you've made it about money and making a buck. And your people don't have the freedom to sit and to think and to wonder about God's glory and who he is and what he might mean to me. And they created all these barriers, I call them obstacles, to good people who wanted to come to God. And I thought, you know what? I think there's still people setting up obstacles to come to God. Think about it. What obstacles are out there today? I mean, we're not selling anything. If you grew up in a church that never sold anything at church, this is where this comes from. You couldn't sell tickets. I grew up at church. We could sell tickets for a women's event on Friday. We couldn't do it on Sunday. Right? Help me make sense of that, okay? You know, an artist would come in some of your churches. An artist would come in. You do free will offerings, but you couldn't charge for a ticket, right? It's all that stuff has to do with this. So Jesus is here, and he's saying, I want my place to be a place where people can come meet with me. Now I want you to catch something here. Where's God dwell today? Is he in the building? Is he in Stonebridge? I'm not trying to trick you. He's here right now. When we walk out, is this God's church? God's building? It's really not, friends. I'm fond of saying when the last one walks out, God walks out of the building. It's a building, brick and mortar. Where does God dwell today? It's you. It's me. Paul says in 1 Corinthians, he talks about that we are the temple. Our bodies are the temple of the living God. The Spirit of God rests in you. You and I are what people see of Almighty God. If you're a Christ follower, it's you and me together, friend. That's what the world is looking at. That's what the world is wanting to know. Is Jesus real? By this all men will know. What? How did John say it? By this all men will know if you, what? You care for one another. You love one another. By this all men will know God is real if your building and your worship service is spot on. By this all men will God, no, it's us. We are putting God on display. And so I ask myself, what are the barriers? What are the obstacles that come up that keep people from seeing Christ in us? Can I give you a couple for you to think about? I think one of the obstacles that people have is they think they're not good enough. They've done too much bad stuff. There's too much guilt and shame, and God will never accept them. And that's something they've got to work their way through. And the best thing that we can do is help people see that's a lie. I think there's an obstacle that when you hear people say, I don't want to go, Christians are a bunch of hypocrites. We're guilty as charged. Don't try and fight it. Just say we are. I don't know you are, but generally speaking, the church, yeah, we screw up. We don't get it right. But you know what? That doesn't mean that Jesus isn't who he said he is and that we can do better. I think there's an obstacle when our priorities are wrong. When we're too busy, we're too indifferent, we don't care about one another, we don't care about what's going on. I think that presents an obstacle. I think it's an obstacle when the good people of God don't stand up and confront evil. That's exactly what Jesus is doing here. He was like, oh, you know what, guys? Hey, can we talk about this? Could you do a little better? He was like, get out of here, because what you're doing is harming people. You're hurting people. We see people as a problem. Jesus sees people as a priority. Hear me. There's so many just good people that Christ loves and he gave his life for, that he wants to see come into the kingdom. And the best thing we can do is help them get there, not create a barrier and a reason why they don't want to come. Our priorities get out of whack. It's not important to us. We miss opportunities. We look past because sometimes it's awkward or it's hard or it's uncomfortable. This to me was the hinge point of why Jesus came. He doesn't go to do like the bad guy. Get the bad guy out of here. God, would you judge? In fact, I read this week that the rabbis of Jesus' day said that when the Messiah comes, he's going to all the evil people and he's going to beat them up. He's going to judge them. And what Jesus does is he goes to the temple and he says, you're partly right. I'm going to start with the people of God and say, knock this stuff off. Live like kingdom people. Jesus comes to remove barriers. One of the things that I would like you to think about over the next couple of weeks is, as you and I are out living life, as you're living life, how can you knock down some barriers people have to faith? Because you had to come through some, didn't you? Before you became a person that trusted Jesus, didn't you have barriers? Didn't you have obstacles? Didn't you have walls up? How'd you get past your walls? What was it that God used in your life to help you see, you know what, maybe I can take a step here? That can be extremely helpful as you think about your story, sharing it with other people. The final observation I made here is that Jesus came to restore what was broken. So it's interesting to me, after the temple, after he kicks these people out, it says the blind and the lame came to him at the temple and he healed them. Because this is what the church is to be. We're to be a place where Jesus meets people and brings help and brings hope and brings healing. By when we love, when we care, when we embrace, when we say there's no outsider, that all are welcome, when we are inclusive rather than exclusive. Those are all things that Christ talked about, that we offer to people. Jesus, these people, once this place got cleaned up, and Jesus said, get the noise out of here. My house is to be a house of prayer. Hurting people came to him, and then he helped them. Friends, that's what Easter does. Easter of all times a year is the chance we have to go out into this community and have conversations and bring some hope and some healing as people know there's a God who loves them, that Christ has forgiven them, that heaven is a reality, that there's a power to live now and you don't have to live in a sense of brokenness or guilt or shame or enslaved to whatever it is that's got you, that Jesus frees people from that. You don't think that's true? I'm going to ask you, do you think that's possible? Here's my question. Anybody in here has found that to be true already in your life? Did your life change because you're following Christ? Because you know there was some stuff there, but Jesus has helped you or helping you work your way through that? Isn't that what we're talking about? Didn't we have the Andersons up here last Sunday to say that before Easter 16 years ago? And now look at their life. And we could march up others. This is what we're about. We're about bringing hope and healing to people and showing them if Jesus could do what he did then, he can still do it. That's what next Sunday is about. That's what Easter Sunday is. Our chance to remember that Christ is for us and not against us. Team's coming up. I got a story I want to leave you with. I'm not sure it's a true story, but it is one that illustrates, and I know the guy's a real guy. I heard it years ago, and it has stuck with me, and it has influenced how I respond to situations. The gentleman's name is Henry Newen. Henry, at his heyday, was a professor at Yale and Harvard, very educated man, a sought-after man, and somewhere in his mid-50s, he left Harvard to go to a community in Toronto that helped people with disability. So he left the fame and notoriety and the paycheck of Harvard to go serve with a nonprofit in Toronto and to work with people that just had, stuff going on, broken people. While he was there, the story goes that he befriended a gentleman by the name of Trevor. Trevor was maybe in his 20s. Trevor had severe emotional and mental challenges. And there came a point where they sent Trevor to a psych unit at a hospital to be evaluated. Okay? So Henry, after a little bit of time, wants to go visit Trevor. He contacts the president of the hospital, says, hey, I'm going to come, I want to see Trevor. And the president of the hospital, knowing who Henry was, says, hey, would you mind, we've got this, we call it a president's dinner. It's a really nice dinner. We get all our donuts, our doctors together. It's kind of a big deal. Would you mind speaking at that? And Henry's like, I'd love to do that. I mean, I'd be honored that you would ask me. And so the day comes when he goes to the hospital there in Toronto, and he meets the guy in charge, and he looks around. It's called the Golden Room. It was called the Golden Room, and there's no Trevor. Can't see him. Room's packed. Doctors, donors, a lot of big money, a lot of nice fancy linens, etc. But there's no Trevor. And so Henry asked the organizer, he said, hey, where's Trevor? And he's like, oh, sorry, we don't let patients into the Golden Room. This is not like the right setting for him. And so Henry thinks for a moment and has, by his words here, he said, it's just like a moment of the Spirit of God. He just prayed quietly. He was inviting God to guide him, and he felt the Holy Spirit saying, you need to include Trevor. You need to include Trevor in this event. Okay? So, just, you got the pause, right? Henry, organizer of the event, there's no Trevor. Henry's quietly praying, and he looks at the organizer of the event, and he says, man, I'm really sorry. He said, I came to see Trevor. He said, if you'll just show me where Trevor is, I'll go hang out with Trevor, have lunch with Trevor, and then I'll go home. Okay, now the organizer of the event's got a room full of people that came to hear Henry. So he's like, whoa, hang on, just a second. Let me go get him. So about 15 minutes later, he shows up, and Trevor comes in. Okay? You got it all. It comes to the head table. He's sitting next to Henry. And as the story goes, just before they're going to get their food, Trevor takes his glass of Coke. I got to get the words here. I'm going to mess it up. He picks up his glass of Coke, and he says, I want to make a toast. Room goes deathly silent. They're like, no idea what's going to come next, right? He says, I want to make a toast. Everyone gets really nervous, especially the guy in charge. Trevor raises his glass, and he said, this is my toast. If you're happy and you know it, raise your glass. Okay? So everybody starts freaking out. They really don't know what to do. And so he says it again. If you're happy and you know it, raise your glass. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it, if you're happy and you know it, raise your glass. And everybody's just sort of like, okay, all right, someone maybe, help him, whatever. And so Henry picks up his glass. And what does Henry do? Henry raises his glass. And he and Trevor say, if you're happy and you know it, raise your glass. And he stands up next to Trevor, and suddenly the table they're at, they stand and they start doing it. And apparently as they get to the end, if you're happy and you know it, everyone is shouting. If you're happy and you know it, you really want to show it, raise your glass. There's the room with some applause at the end. Henry showed us in real life what I think Jesus would want us to see. To stand next to the marginalized, the broken, to not be afraid, to confront evil, to confront prejudice, to say, hey, that's not right, and I'm going to stand with what's right, to be inclusive rather than exclusive, to come gently and humbly. And I'm just left with wanting to ask you this. When you look at Jesus, what do you see? When you look at what our church might do for this community, what do you see? Because I think Christ is still calling people to humbly follow him, to lift up others, to serve one another, to make God glorified. Let's sing with these guys.